Welcome back everyone, and it's time to go balls deep. And once again, the latest My Hero Academia chapter didn't fail to blow our minds. Seriously though, through all of this, I'm just thinking how Horikoshi will catch on to our ballsy prediction and how he just saw through his whole story at this point. Because for the last 6 months after the time skip, this is me reading every chapter of My Hero Academia. Seriously guys, on the last few chapters, Gran Torino got bodied and will potentially die just like we predicted. Aizawa also was shot with that quirk destroying bullet, once again us hitting the mark. Although he did just manage to save himself by cutting off his own leg. Deku unlocked his float quirk like the way we said, and now Shigaraki's body is going to be taken over by All For One, just like we have been saying for the last few months. And to top things off, we have been constantly suggesting how Nana Shimura will play a huge part in this arc, interacting with her grandson through Deku, possibly even helping him in some ways. And what do we know, guys?
Bitch, you guessed it!
Okay, we continue from where we last left off with Deku looking at Bakugo in complete shock. Seriously, Bakugo sacrificing himself by jumping in front of the spike to take a hit for Deku blew everyone's mind. As Bakugo takes the fall, he tells Deku, "Don't go playing hero by yourself." Yes boy, don't forget Bakugo from the start wasn't really the best team player, but his character has grown so much now that even he filled the hole that was stopping him from becoming a true hero. A hero even the likes of Hero Killer Stain will be proud of. But moving to Shigaraki, who is more or less possessed by his sensei All For One, tries to fight the takeover, saying, "Erg, stop it! Nani? Chatamate! Yamate! Yamate! No!"
He's such a child.
Seriously guys, Shigaraki, who managed to get a hold of his body for a split second, releasing his quirk in the process, letting go of Bakugo. And as Deku witnesses his buddy Bakugo fall in midair, he exclaims "Ka!" But before he finishes his sentence, more than likely of saying "Ka-chan," Todoroki comes from below and manages to grab onto Bakugo's leg just in time before completely falling to the ground. And guys, you gotta give Todoroki a lot of props because he pretty much saves Bakugo whilst also saving an overheated Endeavor. Yes, with one arm he has his father wrapped safe and sound, and with the other he has Bakugo, meaning that Endeavor isn't dead yet either. Now we don't know if Bakugo and Endeavor will overcome these injuries, but in my opinion more than likely they will. The only hero I do see dying for sure is Gran Torino, but hey, I could be wrong. But with Bakugo and Endeavor secured, we move back to Shigaraki, who gurgles aloud and thrashes around with his body still extremely charred and a bit too crispy. Actually, scratch that, our dude is overcooked at this point.
Oh my god!
On a serious note, Shigaraki, who is still trying to suppress All For One's takeover, attempts to state, "It's my..." Where it cuts off, he was going to tell All For One that "It's my body, it's my dreams." But before he could finish his sentence, All For One seemed to have won the battle of the mind and now has full control over Shigaraki's body. And with that, All For One lets Deku know this fight today has shed a lot of useless blood, as he charges his tendrils towards them and continues to say, "But that just now had to be the most useless of all." However, Shigaraki's sensei's statement triggered Deku, leading to a sudden inner dialogue. "If you act out of rage, your power will respond accordingly. The most important part is to keep your head clear." Now this statement was in reference to the 5th user of One For All back in chapter 213 when he was giving Deku some advice. This appears to be a foreshadowing because we then see Deku, who has really lost his cool, gearing up to deal a blow to All For One. But All For One responds back using his tendril, which Deku takes head on. Deku then bites the tendril, holding it off along with the help of using his black whip, where he is able to shatter some of them in the process. Deku then shouts, telling All For One to take that back! Take it back, bastard! More than likely referring to All For One saying there was a lot of useless bloodshed and Bakugo's bloodshed was the most useless. But throughout all of this, we see Shigaraki with an emotionless expression as a crack appears intersecting his face. Creepy as this is, we get a full frontal shot. We can see none other than All For One smiling within the cracks. This honestly freaked me the shit out. Horikoshi has the horror element on point in this chapter. Now the question to why All For One is inside Shigaraki is still a mystery. Either Deku is seeing something that only he can see with his connection to All For One, or this is something literal. If it's literally the case, All For One somehow managed to insert himself inside Shigaraki Shigaraki, maybe through the experiment or through One For All's quirk itself. But for now, I'm going to take this as something metaphorical on what's going on behind the scene where All For One is taking over Shigaraki's body. But if you guys want us to go more balls deep in this to explain why Horikoshi chose to depict things like this, we will do so. Let us know in the comment section below. And I also want to let you know, thank you so much for your support lately, and thanks to all of you who bought the Deku merch. And for those who haven't got their merch yet, make sure to use the code DEKU for 15% off at the checkout, and tweet the picture at us on Twitter or Instagram for a shout out. Now jump cut into a new scene. We get to see an overview of what was once Sauru City in the Osaka prefecture. I probably butchered that, but who cares at this point. Now with Giga Machia going on a rampage through the city, with reporters citing that he is showing no sign of stopping and urging everyone to run away. Not even the poor granny was safe from Machia.
Run, bitch! Run!
In fact, we have live footage from the reporters on the scene. Now whilst in his demolition, a puzzled Machia notices not one but two of his masters sent, one being Shigaraki and the other of One For All, which kind of gives us the impression that All For One in Shigaraki's body may not just be a remnant similar to how One For All has in the previous users, but it is in fact the actual All For One himself, which goes back to the image of him within the crack of Shigaraki's face. All For One, with the help of science, may have found a way to not only transfer quirks but people themselves. I mean, we don't know the exact procedure that went on to creating this new Shigaraki. It might not be far-fetched to assume that All For One was actually cloned inside of Shigaraki and not only his quirks. But again, I do still believe that All For One is like a vestige inside of Shigaraki, but has in fact materialized. But as you transition again, but this time to the Jaku suburban district further away from Machia, the heroes are told to now be engaging with the villains and have now been given orders to leave the evacuation to the rescue team and police so they can focus on saving civilians as fast as they can. This is due to the fact that most of the heroes who went to the siege of Shigaraki and the rest of the villains have now lost communication with the outside due to the jammed signals, and they are not aware of what's happening. Therefore, they require to be informed on foot. Time on the essence, and now the heroes are desperate to minimize the damage and save even one more life. We then move to an unsettled Uraraka who is reflecting on how uneasy she feels about the situation. Despite the detailed planning that went behind this attack, she feels the situation isn't improving at all. She then begins to recall the many run-ins with Shigaraki after each encounter, beginning to feel more and more despair, unable to escape the darkness, continuously being chased, describing it like when the sun sets and the shadow stretches even further. She begins to worry for her classmates' safety. This is very poetic of Uraraka. Maybe she knew the time was coming when they first met Shigaraki. The moment the sun set, he was going to be in their path chasing them down, like how a shadow never leaves you until death. Now as Uraraka thinks back on the guys, the scene goes back to a horrified Todoroki as All For One touches Deku's face. Shoto yells out, "Midoriya!" in absolute shock, desperate to save him but unable to do so because of the injured Bakugo and Endeavor. After realizing his predicament, Deku hastily triggers his Black Whip quirk to restrain Shigaraki once more and distance themselves. But it may have been a little too late. "Finally, I have touched you. Now be mine, One For All!" the smug All For One exclaims gleefully, finally having One For All in his grasp. Now once again, in our previous videos we have analyzed that it's possible that All For One cannot take One For All like the other quirks, because as of yet it's not confirmed if this was even possible. The metaphysical realm that the One For All vestiges lives in are in somewhat guardians to this magnificent quirk. So will All For One be challenged by the vestiges, or will he be able to possess One For All just like any other quirk?
This goes deep!
With everyone looking up at them from the ground, we then see Midoriya and Shigaraki being engulfed in the metaphysical dimension in the form of darkness, possibly connecting Deku's One For All with Shigaraki's All For One realm. This world seems to be empty and barren, but in the darkness along the distance Deku sees something. It's Shigaraki. Behind Shigaraki is All For One grasping him, holding him down in some form of submission. This is the literal representation of All For One finally taking over his body. However, Shigaraki is pleading for him him to leave him alone. All For One speaks saying, "Even if you say so, Tomura, if I hadn't lent you my power, you would be burned to a crisp, and even if you survived that, a fall from this height means certain death." Shigaraki responds by saying that this is his dream and his path, and not to hinder him. This interaction between Shigaraki and All For One is evidence enough that Shigaraki was just being used as some sort of vessel for All For One. If you guys remember, we have been saying this for months now. The personality type All For One possesses, it's very likely that he wants to live more and doesn't want to pass his power on, rather become part of the vessel in a more direct way than the indirect nature of One For All. His dialogue is also a reminder for Shigaraki that he is still nothing. He is still just the same whiny boy from when he was young and has to depend on All For One to achieve his goals. All For One didn't really give him a purpose, but rather used that purpose as a pawn to create the dependency between them to further manipulate Shigaraki. Again, we went further into the reasoning of All For One taking Shigaraki's body in the end of My Hero Academia series, so make sure you guys check that out. But Deku, witnessing all of this, has a shocked look on his face, but is yeeted into the black smoke that was engulfing him. It is as if he was drowning into the darkness. However, a hand is set on his head, just like how All For One hands was on Shigaraki's head on the page earlier. We then hear, "You still can't move in this world, but we will do something about that." And is none other than Nana Shimura. Balls, the prediction quirk is right again. So yeah guys, we predicted that Nana would show up and then confront Shigaraki through Deku, as she is Shigi's grandmother. But her showing up here is actually to aid Deku in this world of the quirks. Deku isn't strong enough to walk around or even stay in this world yet. He must first master his quirks to be able to stand up to All For One, who seems to be able to exist in this world easily. The parallelism between Deku and Shigaraki's situation is brilliant here. Just a page ago, All For One was bringing Shigaraki down so he could take over. But on this page, Nana is bringing Deku up so she could fulfill their dreams for them. Another thing to note is that Nana says "we will" rather than "I will," which suggests that we will see more One For All users. Most likely we won't see all of the users, but definitely Nana and Banjo, as those are the quirks Deku has unlocked and learned to use so far. Along with that, there also might be the case when All For One's little brother, the first user of the One For All quirk, might have a confrontation. The brothers will speak to each other, but that's where things will disengage. And for the 50th time, everything will come to a theory of all of this pushing the notion that this war will end with Deku and the gang just barely escaping, forcing a resistance arc later down the line. This will more likely involve a time skip where Eri will play her part along with Deku finally understanding the full nature of One For All. During all of this, the villains will be in control and the dream that All For One foretold will take its course. But eventually the good guys will triumph in the end, fulfilling the ending to the story All For One told his little brother about the Demon Lord. Well, anyway guys, that's the end of this chapter. My Hero Academia has been throwing out bangers every week and I can't wait to read the next chapter. Make sure to check out the Deku merch, and if you like the other merch, make sure to cop them as well. Join the Discord, follow us on Twitter and Instagram for updates. With that guys, I'll see you till next time. Bye.